Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Welcome to this very special edition of Atlanta Business Radio. It is time for our Atlanta Cares series, brought to you by our good friends at Atlanta Planning Group. Now, here's your host, Miss Grace Hayden. How are ya?
I'm doing good. How are you, Stone?
I am doing well. I love doing this particular series so much because we meet bright, passionate people out there. I don't even know what the right words are. Doing well by doing good.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to think of it as anyone adding flavor to the Atlanta area we want on this show, so we can share a little bit about what they do and help people find out more about them.
So who'd you bring with you?
So today we've got a great show. First up, we're going to hear from Kristi Porter. Kristi Porter helps nonprofits and for-profits with a social media mission to get noticed and grow through effective marketing and communication. She also teaches solo entrepreneurs and small businesses how to incorporate easy philanthropy strategies. So, Kristi, you call yourself the Chief Do-Gooder. Tell me a little bit about how you got started as a chief do-gooder for your company.
Yes, thank you for having me on. I think whenever you start your own company, you get to make up your own title. So I actually get a lot of comments about the chief do-gooder thing, but it was because I didn't want founder or CEO or something like that. That just didn't feel as right to me as chief do-gooder. So I made up something more fun that was a good conversation starter at the same time. But I have kind of a business communications background, started here in the Atlanta area at a PR agency that focused on hospitality, mostly restaurants. I was there for a few years, then went out on my own as a freelance writer for a couple years, always volunteering with different places on the side. And then I was recruited into the Captain Planet Foundation, so I was the director of communications there for a couple of years as well. Then started getting more involved in the social impact space and more volunteering, but especially in the social justice community. I have a particular heart for human trafficking victims and the people that are working in those spaces. So started getting involved more. And then my last full-time job, besides I guess what I do now, was at a nonprofit called Orange. And so I was the event marketing director there. So had the full-time job, was freelancing on the side just as opportunities came up, and then was volunteering anytime I could, especially in the social impact space. And so I was usually the first person in my position or maybe even in my department. So I enjoy going in and setting things up. And I kind of felt like I had done what I set out to do there at my last full-time job and was trying to figure out what was next and was looking back on the people I'd volunteered with, freelanced for, and built these relationships with, and really wanted to play more in the nonprofit and social impact space. And, I was very lucky to be in the restaurant industry as chefs started becoming rock stars, and that was a new trend. Then I was in the green movement as that started taking off and becoming a big thing. And then in 2012, when I was formally introduced to the social enterprise movement, which is the intersection of cause and commerce, I thought this is the next big thing for business, and I really want to be in this space more. So went back to the people I'd been helping out and said, hey, if I went and did this on my own, would you guys be able to pay for projects? Because unfortunately, a lot of people in the social impact space, whether nonprofit or for-profit, social enterprise, didn't have a lot of marketing and communications training. So they came to me and asked questions, and I said, okay, what if I went and did this formally? And so that was how I got my first clients. And the first 18 months, I just worked with people I knew, which was a terrific way to get started because I cared about them and they cared about me. And I like to say that starting Signify was me professionally supporting the people and causes I was already supporting personally.
And so there's definitely, I'm with you, a growing trend of social justice becoming something that's important to people, and even for-profit businesses like to showcase that they have philanthropic causes.
Right.
What are some mistakes or some common things people come to you for advice on when it comes to showcasing that aspect of an organization?
Yeah. The two problems that I help people fix on the for-profit side, it usually comes in one or two buckets. It's either they don't know, if they're very small, they think they haven't quote, made it. And so they can't start giving back because they don't have a lot of money or they don't have a lot of resources or they can't volunteer 1 day a week. So they're not doing anything because they think they don't have enough. So I help them. I like to use the example of a garage sale. Whatever you have to give is enough that somebody else wants. And it always works out perfectly, especially if you're a small business wanting to work with a small nonprofit. That's always a great partnership because it's valuable to both of you and you can see your impact. The other side of the coin from that is there are people doing great things, but they're afraid to talk about it. So they actually don't market it at all because they're afraid to look exploitive to the cause, which is a great problem to have. And I understand it. But there was a great study done a couple of years ago by Coven Communications that 88% of people wanted to know that a company stood for something and sold something. So it was, 88% is a hard number to ignore. So if you're doing something great, then talk about it. And that's just another way you can promote a cause that you care about. Of course, there's a fine line that you have to walk and not looking exploitive, but too many people, I think, are holding back on what they're doing, because they're afraid to look like there's something wrong or looking exploitive to the cause. But I think we're all interested, I use the example of shoes. A lot of people know Tom's shoes. And so, somebody said I had $40 and I need a new pair of shoes, and the two pairs of shoes are comparable, but one does something good and one doesn't. A lot of people will naturally make the assumption to go in the direction of a shoe that's doing something good. So it's a great thing to talk about. It's a great thing to get employees engaged on, new customers, retention. I mean, there's just so many benefits across the board. So I'm excited that we're seeing it take off.
So it sounds like there's a business case for doing good, in addition to it being 2020 and we need to do the right thing. Yes. But that's interesting. And so you tend to work for companies with cool names. I heard Captain Planet, Orange, and now Signify, your own brand. What does the name mean? Yeah. High standards for cool names.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about why you chose the name Signify and what it means to you.
So I'm first and foremost, I'm a writer. I've always been a writer, and copywriting is a lot of what I do. So words are very important to me. So I actually, had a stack of checks sitting on my desk for the first several months I was in business because I hadn't picked a business name because it was that important to me. So I didn't have a business bank account to put them in. So it was a long process. And so one day I didn't want to. There are plenty of people who name their businesses after themselves, which is fine, but it's not something I wanted to do. I really wanted the name of the company to be more about what we could all do together rather than just being built on my name. So I kind of went to my favorite coffee shops, Alon's, and sat there. It is an amazing place. And sat there and just wrote stream of consciousness. If somebody asked me what this business was about, what would I tell them? And so I wrote down all of the things that I could think of and then used my trusty thesaurus.com and started searching out words that sort of meant all of those things because I do words for the year. So I wanted it to be one word. I wanted it to have multiple meanings. I wanted it to be very action oriented. And so it was one word that was going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting. And so finally I got to Signify, which means to make important, to represent, and to make known. And so I felt like that was a very collaborative word. It was very action oriented, and it really kind of got to the heart of what I wanted the business to be about in making causes more known, whether they're for profit or nonprofit.
So what are some examples of things that you do to make causes more known?
Yeah. So I like to say that you don't have to be a large organization to look and sound professional. So a lot of what I do is helping people either from a copywriting standpoint, just looking in, sounding more professional, looking like there's a lot of intentionality that went into the words, not using the right amount of words, because we're unfortunately in my industry, we're just not big readers anymore. We're skimmers. And so you want to make sure the words have the most impact. So little things like that, but making everything feel very intentional. From a marketing standpoint, a lot of people come to me and usually kind of fall into a few different places. One, they either just don't have a strong brand message. They are really passionate about what they do, like a lot of people in this space, but they don't articulate it well. Or if I ask them, okay, if you serve a homeless the homeless population and this organization does the same thing, what's the difference between you? And they can't articulate it well. And we all need to know what makes our brand special to make it stand out, because I only have so many dollars to give. So I need you to make a case for where my money's going to go and how I can really get behind your mission. And then part of it is just they got really bad advice. And if they're small or have I think it's almost 90% of small businesses have less than 20 people. So we're not talking about large marketing and communications departments. So somehow they either got the idea or were given bad advice to like open all the accounts and do all of the things. And now they're just overwhelmed and not doing any of it. So it might be just helping them focus in on what's actually going to make the most impact for them and where to use their time and energy, to get the most bang for their buck and to really find the people that want to support them, because I think all of us, whether we're conscious of it or not, are out there looking to support something. So it's how to find your right people.
And so I could see that being pretty challenging because there's a big difference in the way generations receive information. Like if I think about baby boomers, they might read the newspaper, whereas millennials will get on Twitter. So what platforms are most effective? Or are you finding any specific challenges related to those gaps in generations and the way we receive information and find out about things?
Yeah. Well, part of it is about who your audience is, of course. Part of it is about what you can actually, sometimes the best strategy is what you can actually just do well. It's not necessarily what the pros tell you, but if I tell you, if you're scared to death of being on camera and somebody tells you, well, everything is on YouTube now, you have to be on YouTube, then you're just not going to do it, or you're going to feel really self-conscious about it. So that's not going to be the best advice I'm going to give you. It's to be able to do what you can actually execute well. So that's one thing. And the other thing I'm really passionate about is websites, which is kind of a funny thing to take a stand for, but we all have them. And it's kind of our digital calling card. It's our digital doorstep where everybody's going. So again, that has to, whether you're looking for, especially if you're looking for younger generations, it's got to look good. It's got to sound good. It's got to catch attention. But I think there's just so much competition that even if you are talking about an older generation, it still has to pull its weight there as well. And I actually did a client project about a year ago, and I evaluated several hundred websites. And from the mom and pop shops all the way up to global brands, a lot of them had the same elements that were missing in their websites. They're growing too fast. They're not catching up. Their mission had pivoted, or they had opened new accounts and aren't connecting them. There are broken page links. I mean, a lot of the same issues were occurring over and over again. But if that's where people are going to go to primarily find out about you, whether they got there from Facebook or Twitter or something else, or a blog post that they Googled, or, however they ended up on your website, if it's not doing the job, then those beautiful ads you're running somewhere else are just wasted money.
So it sounds like you get to really know the clients and find out what mediums they're comfortable with and then try to come up with a plan for them. Like if they don't want to be on YouTube, you're not going to push them towards that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Yeah. So what are the kinds of people that you work for, and what are some favorite success stories, maybe a favorite client that you've helped change their marketing scheme?
Yeah. Let's see. So I work with three different kinds of, organizations. One is nonprofits, of course. One is for-profit social impact companies. And then the third one is sort of that other bucket of, solopreneurs and small businesses looking to start their philanthropy journey. So helping them find easy ways with what they already have to give to be able to give back to the causes they care about. So that one is still kind of evolving, and that one's really fun and exciting, because I love seeing people want to take that first journey. In the nonprofit space, one of my favorite clients and favorite examples is Atlanta Dream Center. I've been a volunteer with them since 2013. And they've also been a past client. In fact, they were probably the first people to sign on as my clients because I'd volunteered with them whenever I started. So I got to help them with their annual benefit dinner for 2 years. And the first year I helped them, again, it sounds so simple, and I, kind of harp on the same things over and over again because they keep coming true, but it is that looking and sounding more professional, because like a lot of nonprofits, they had a lot of people chip in over the years. It wasn't the same people weren't helping year to year. So we were trying to just gather everything, put it in a really cohesive manner that their staff could deliver on, and really helping. They were starting to outsource to people like me at the time. So it wasn't all on their staff either, because their staff already had a lot to do. And at a big event like that, their staff needs to be talking to the donors. They don't need to be bussing tables. And so we kind of helped them get a lot of those things in order. And it was really a pivotal year for them. whenever they were starting to branch out from only, insiders and people who knew them and had been around from the beginning to people who were helping spread the word and people who didn't know their message as well. So we had to completely pivot their messaging to bring in a whole new audience. And that year we quadrupled their fundraising donation.
Wow.
And so it was a lot of tweaks. And, the staff actually left that night, not just feeling, obviously the money is great, but not just feeling that, but they actually felt like they were there doing what they were good at doing, and they were doing their jobs and not just having to run around making sure the plates were cleared and a lot of things like that too many nonprofits have to rely on at those big events because they just don't have enough resources and manpower. So some of those little tweaks that can make a huge difference.
So in addition to helping nonprofits function a little better, you also in your business support philanthropic causes as well, correct?
Yes.
Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. Mostly what I give, because with all of us, it's one of my most valuable things to give is my time. So I do give donations from time to time. But a lot of what I give is sometimes just extra consulting hours, or if somebody just doesn't have the budget to hire me, I can give them an hour of my time to really, talk them through some strategies that could really make a big difference. Or, one of the most valuable things that any of us have to offer these organizations is, an outside perspective. And so even just being able to sit down with them for an hour or two and saying, here's what I see as an outsider, because we're so close and so personal. It's that whole forest for the trees type thing that we just can't see things as clearly. And it's so personal to us. And, we think everybody knows what this means. Everybody has this idea, but that's really not the case. So for some of my clients, even my friends my clients at Dr. Bombay's tea shop, their proceeds from the tea shops send girls to college in India. So I've been with them to India and, seen the program firsthand. And so that's part of what, they've hired me for, is just to be the outside perspective, to look at things differently when they're in the weeds of it every day. And just, it's the same reason I would hire a consultant too. We get so personal and so close to it and hold it so closely. But when somebody else can come in and just give you a little bit of insight that can help set you up and change complete directions or help pivot you in a new way, then that can make all the difference.
So what do you think the future looks like for these types of organizations?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. One, I'm really, nonprofits are most of my clients. I love working with nonprofits. I love being around nonprofits. I've worked at a couple myself, but I also love to see them changing their models up a little bit. A lot of them are looking for different revenue streams. They are not just relying on donations. I mean, there's over 1.5 million nonprofits in the U.S. alone. So each of us only have so many dollars to give, and so it's so competitive. So if you can find a way to help build new revenue streams, I think that's exciting to see nonprofits taking that under their wing and not just doing the traditional grants are great, individual donations are great. Even cause marketing has, I think, doubled or tripled in the last decade. So that's nonprofits teaming up with more corporate partners for, reciprocal benefits. So I think that's a different income stream. It's the way people are building a lot of new models in nonprofits. I think that's exciting. And then one is just the social enterprise model as a whole. Like I said, it's the intersection of commerce and cause. So I have Warby Parker glasses. I have Tom's shoes. Those are both 1-for-1 models. I have Listen headphones. Those are also 1-for-1. So the same way, if you can get something that somebody already needs, and so there's the commerce behind it, you can sell something that somebody already needs. But if the proceeds, if baked into your business model is an opportunity for giving, I think we've just seen that take off again and again because, we live such interconnected lives and blended lives, and it isn't just 9 to 5, and it isn't just what I do on the weekends or nights or anything else, but it's how can I make a difference with the whole life that I'm leading, not just the hours I have to volunteer on the weekends. And so I think the rise of the social enterprise model is super exciting. And I think that is the future of business.
It's not going anywhere. Love to hear that. All right. So real quick, what's some of the best advice you can give people wanting to improve their brand identity? If you could give 3 quick tips for any listeners.
First of all, your brand message. It always goes back to that. So make sure if somebody asks you what's so great about your company, you can really distinguish yourselves. It may be who you are, what you do. It may be your model. It may be who works with you. It may be when you started. There's any number of things that it can be. But if I have $20 to give to you or to somebody else, why do you get my $20? You should be able to answer that very clearly. The second one is your audience, always being aware of what they want and what they're interested in and how they like to be communicated to. So part of it is what I can do well, but I also want to make sure what I can do well is resonating with my audience, and where they're being found. So always keep a tab on that. And I really am a big fan of doing surveys and getting out there and talking to people and networking and all the ways you can actually keep in touch with your audience, because you can't just sit in your office and guess. That's not a strategy. And third, I'll go back to the website. I think it's just so important. Facebook and there's so many conversations we could have about Facebook, but I think, social media and social media ads are all the rage right now, and they're the shiny object in the marketing world. But like I said, you can have amazing Facebook ads, but if they're leading people back to broken links or bad messaging or a website that's just not doing its job, I mean, I think outside of your people, that your website is your greatest marketing asset, and it's the one that doesn't take breaks and holidays. And so making sure it's doing its job for you and working hard is the other thing that I think you can always go back to rely on.
Very cool. So if people want to learn more about you or get in touch with you, what are your coordinates? What's your website? The easiest way to find me is my website. It's signify.solutions. So I know it's a little traditional. It's not a .com or .co or anything like that. It's signify.solutions. And from there, you'll find all my social media links and all the different ways you can connect with me. And there's a lot of freebies on there. So if you're launching, you have something new you want to talk about, I've got a launch marketing checklist on there, and lots of other freebies and goodies that will help you look and sound more professional so you can do more good. Very cool. Well, thank you for your time. I hope you'll stick around. We've got two other awesome guests up next, starting with Mr. Philip Coven. He is the Vice President of Pollock Commercial, and he specializes in in-town Atlanta commercial real estate sales and leasing, specifically office tenant representation. With proven success in identifying and exceeding client goals, Philip is known for providing one-on-one service with keen attention to detail. Thanks for joining us today, Philip.
Well, thank you, Grace, for having me on Atlanta Cares Radio.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do as a commercial real estate agent?
Sure. So I'm with Pollock Commercial, and Pollock is an Atlanta boutique commercial real estate brokerage firm, putting people and businesses first. We focus on building long-term relationships with commercial real estate investors, owners, and tenants. And a majority of our business is office tenant representation, and we're basically helping our clients find the best space for their needs, helping them to negotiate the best deal possible based on our market knowledge and deal knowledge, which you can't necessarily get in the Business Chronicle or in the AJC. You're not going to find that information out there. And then continuing to be there with them after the lease is signed, whether they've outgrown their space 2 years down the road or they've shrunk in size, which is very common, especially when you go through a recession, which we went through about 10 years ago, and maybe leaning towards another one pretty soon. It's hard to say. Or, maybe they've merged with another company and they no longer need that space, or some direction or operation of the organization has changed. And although we're not in the nonprofit world like a lot of the guests on Atlanta Cares, we feel what we do is very important, because if you look at any organization, what they pay for their office space is a big portion of their monthly operating expenses. And so if they've gotten in too deep, then the organization's not going to survive. And so they need a trusted advisor, someone who really knows how to negotiate for them. And that's what we're here to do. And we're boutique by choice. There are only 4 agents in our office, so we're a pretty small firm. We're not trying to be the big firms, and we do try, though, to make every one of our clients a priority. We take the time to learn your business, understand your business objectives, educate you on the process, and execute a targeted plan that is well aligned with your organization's goals. And we feel like we do a great job of looking out for our clients' best interests versus just getting the deal closed and getting a paycheck. And we try to do the hard work so that you don't have to, because everyone else, you don't have time to go out there and call on all the buildings that you see and trying to negotiate that and feel like, am I missing something? Am I doing the right thing here? And then we try to just be there. It's a long-term relationship. It's not a short-term, in and out kind of thing for us. We're also very active, in the brokerage community, especially with the Commercial Board of Realtors. The head of our company, Jeff Pollock, is the president-elect for 2020. Oh, wow. And then within our office, I'd say we're all pretty civic-minded. Personally, I serve on the boards of 2 nonprofits. I'm on the board of Freedom Park Conservancy and Easements Atlanta, and very involved in the neighborhood I live in, Emmon Park, and have served in the past on the board of the Atlanta Preservation Center, I'm also an elder at Central Presbyterian Church downtown, which operates an outreach and advocacy center, very involved in social justice reform, and a lot of advocacy issues. We're directly across the street from the state capitol, so we have a lot of visibility there when there are, certain things that are going on across the street.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is impressive. So you really get to know your clients. You develop a long-term relationship. You're involved in the community, and you're keeping up with trends in commercial real estate in the Atlanta area, which has been booming. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the trends that you're seeing in commercial real estate in the area?
Sure. Yeah. One of the things that we're seeing a lot of, and you're hearing a lot about this in the press, is the space sharing concepts. So, shared desks, basically, amenities that you're getting that you wouldn't normally get if you're just renting an office with one or two private offices. You're getting shared meeting rooms. In Atlanta, Regus was the king for many years, executive suite space. But now we have things like Industrious. We have Spaces Atlanta, which we're sitting in right now. There's another Spaces Atlanta over at the Battery right there by the stadium. Downtown, there's Switch Yards. Michael Tefani started that. He's the guy that started Scout Mob. He's got one downtown. He's got one that he's opening in West End. I think another one in Midtown. And then, of course, there's WeWork, which has been in the press a lot lately.
Yes,
not necessarily for the good. I could say have seen that coming maybe a year ago, but it is a concept that I think is going to continue. It's not for everybody, but I think it works for a lot of smaller organizations, especially startups, to have their own space or have somewhere that they can bring clients. And it's definitely a trend that I think will continue. Maybe with some modification. Within companies that actually have their own office space, whether it's a law firm or a nonprofit that's got its own space, the trend has been for some time now to move towards an open plan space versus, moving away from the traditional office space plan with closed off private offices where everyone's got their own office, they can close the door, to more of an open space plan that encourages collaboration between your team and help the creativity of thought. As a tenant rep, we'll go out and show spaces to our clients, and I would say it feels like it's 9 times out of 10 that the space is too built out. There's too many walls, and they want to open it up. So we're really, the cost of tenant improvements is more, it seems like, to me at least, in my opinion, that it's more of demolition than it is building out the space. You've got too many walls, and it's too closed off, and that's just not the way that people want to work. There are some downsides to having an open space plan, though, because you're going to have more noise. If you've got folks who are on the phones, whether they're making sales calls or the tech calls or whatever, you're going to hear each other, and that's going to maybe provide a distraction if you're trying to focus and work. And for so many folks who have ADD these days, it's just really hard to focus when you're got all of this going on around you. And then there's just things like temperature regulation, that you've got 12 people in an open space. How do you keep everybody happy? Is it 73? Is it 68? And it's a hard thing to do. So there are some downsides that I think need to be considered when you're looking for office space. And then, just in trends in general, we have been, the market has been going up. So that means everybody's rent's been going up.
Yes.
And if you're a nonprofit, it's tough when you see that renewal come across your desk and the landlord is saying, yeah, we're going to jack your rate up by another $8 from where you are per square foot, at the end of this term. But that's just part of it. And so a lot of what we are doing with our clients is helping them to kind of shuffling them around. Like, okay, let's go out and look at the options. What else is out there? Maybe it's best for you to stay right where you are, because maybe that is the best option. But if you don't know what else is out there, and you don't know, is there a better rate that could bring down that overhead for you, your organization, then you need to know about it. You need to get out there and look at it. And then we have some clients that say, you know what, I'm tired of leasing space. I want to buy something. Can we buy something for our company? What's out there? And interest rates have remained low. And so there are folks that are still doing that. I would say the supply has dwindled in Atlanta. It's hard to find a good deal on office to buy an office building for the same reasons, because, we're in great times right now. So it's a seller's market, and the sellers know that, and continue to, increase prices. And we've seen them climb from I can remember you could buy an office building in Midtown in the 100s per square foot, and now you're buying in the 300s per square foot. So that's just in a short period of time that has changed. And I think tenants also are looking for more amenities with their office space. They want indoor, whether it's indoor or outdoor, where they want collaborative space. So maybe it's an outdoor patio where their folks can go sit. Maybe it's an indoor type conference room that shared. They want bike storage and shower facilities so their employees can bike to work and take a shower before they start. Electric car charging stations are becoming much more popular, things that we weren't seeing at all 10 years ago when we thought the electric car was dead, and it's back. And in town, we continue to see a lot of adaptive reuse projects. So developers are taking an old warehouse and converting it to office space. And it gives you that cool, lofty feel. You've got open, exposed ceilings. You don't have the drop ceiling, and you've got polished concrete floors like we're looking at right now. And then I think, in Atlanta specifically, we're seeing a lot of densification around city centers. So downtown Norcross is a very happening place to be, and restaurants are coming back to the city center, not just in the city of Atlanta, but Norcross, Alpharetta, Canton. Kind of across the board, we're seeing a lot of that.
That's so interesting, because when I think about today's world, so many of us are on our phones all the time. And sometimes you go out to eat and people aren't speaking. They're looking at their phones. But you're saying in commercial real estate, you're seeing a trend of open spaces for people to congregate and green spaces to hang out and things like that. So it's kind of making me think it's very interesting how real estate shapes our lives. So what do you see for future growth of Atlanta?
Yeah, Atlanta is still a really young city. Just to give some perspective there, we're less than 200 years into existence in the city of Atlanta. New York City is twice as old. Many European cities have been around for 10 times the amount of time that Atlanta's been around. So we're still finding our way, I think, in a lot of ways. And going back 200 years, this was Indian territory. The Creeks and the Cherokees, Native Americans were here long before us, and then they were eventually pushed out. And kind of giving you a background history of Atlanta, the first white settlers who came to Atlanta were farmers. And so for a long time, what you see downtown now was farming territory in the 1830s, 1840s, 1850s. And then the railroad came in, and Western Atlantic was laid out, which basically started with the northern terminus in Chattanooga, and the southern terminus was downtown, what became downtown Atlanta, and that's how Atlanta, was built around that terminus. And that was 1850, basically. Atlanta had a population of 2,569 people just a little over 150 years ago. Wow. 2,569. By 1900, we were up to 419,000 people. Wow. 50 years later, we had passed the $1 million, right at the 1 million population mark. 30 years after that, we doubled to 2 million. And then another 20 years into the year 2000, we passed the 4 million mark. And right now, our current estimate is about 6 million people. And that's the metro Atlanta area. The city of Atlanta population is still right about 500,000 people. But metro, the statistical area, we are the 9th most populous metro area in the U.S. We have no natural boundaries like a lot of other major cities. We're not built on an ocean. We're not built on a river. We're not built on a lake like Chicago is, which leads to sprawl. Now, the sprawl is not necessarily smart growth, but it's going to continue because if people want to find cheaper land and I'm willing to drive an hour and a half, they can do that and go a little bit further out in all directions. I think we'll continue to grow in every direction possible, and I think we're definitely going to see a lot more of growing inward, infill development, filling in the gaps, densifying what we have, and I think that's the kind of smart growth we do need. I'm a big proponent of mass transit. We can talk about that as well, but I think we need to locate people along transit lines. We need to locate people where they've got other transportation options rather than continuing to get further and further out. And
tackle our traffic issue in Atlanta.
That's right. And so, from someone who focuses on in-town markets, the sub-markets that I see that have a lot of potential right now, we've seen over the last 10 years, maybe a little bit longer, 15 years, for West Midtown has become a really popular submarket. Inman Park, Old Fourth Ward, Edgewood, Chamblee, Brookhaven, and next we've got the Memorial Drive district is just popping. That area from the Capitol heading all the way east to really to Moreland and even further. Lots of new restaurants, new developments, new townhomes, new people moving in. East Point, College Park. Those are logical places for people to move because they're on the MARTA line. They're close in. You can get anywhere really quick. The housing prices are much lower than if you're looking north of I-20. The South Side, in my opinion, is way overdue, and it's coming. And then personally, I love downtown. I think that downtown, I've always wondered, having only moved to Atlanta in '96, I remember first seeing Midtown, and Midtown was just a wasteland of empty buildings, lots of parking lots, lots of vacancy. The Biltmore Hotel had been vacant, I think, for 18 years when I moved here in '96, and was, it was really kind of a homeless hotel. It was boarded up, kind of forgotten about. We had at least one U.S. president had stayed there overnight. Lots of, had these two beautiful ballrooms, and it's all been restored. And thanks to Jim Borders and being a little bit brave and bold, I think that was 1998. So just a couple years after I moved to Atlanta, he came in and restored the Biltmore. And then you started seeing a new development or redevelopment, reoccupancy of the buildings that had been boarded up for all these years around there. So Midtown's is night and day from where it was 20 years ago. Downtown hasn't quite done that, but everything that you're reading about in the AJC and in the Business Chronicle now, there's so much going on downtown. It's just mind-boggling to think about.
That's kind of reassuring because, maybe that means our commutes will start getting shorter as people start moving in town. And you said you did have some thoughts on public transportation in Atlanta and transit in general. So kind of curious. Yeah. You got me a little bit hopeful. So sure. Wanted to get your thoughts. Sure.
And again, Atlanta's a very young city. We didn't have our first mass transit until 1871, and that was a streetcar. We didn't have a subway system until 1979, unlike New York and Chicago and the other big cities. And that took us 14 years of discussion to get to that point where we actually had a train system. And granted, it's still somewhat of a spine that really hasn't grown like it should in the 40 years since it first came into existence. But there's so much involved with politics and planning, and now construction costs are very exorbitant. If you want to add 1 mile of train, I think it's just millions of dollars, and it's incredible to think about. But we do have currently we have 47.6 miles of rail on the MARTA line, 38 rail stations. And so people think, well, there's just not many stations, but there's 38 in the city. And I think that's a great start. And then there's this little thing called the Beltline that came out of nowhere in 1999, I want to say, or 98. A fellow named Ryan Gravel, who I count as a friend, did a graduate thesis project at Georgia State to say, hey, here's what we could do with these abandoned rail lines in the city. And that the idea was to take those abandoned rail lines and create walking paths and to also create pedestrian-friendly rail transit. Well, the walking paths have come along quite well. There's a 3-mile trail on the east side. There's a 3-mile trail on the west side. There's some other interim trails as well. Eventually, it will be a 22-mile loop. And the rail transit, I think, has lagged behind, but there's an advocacy group that's pushing for that rail to happen that will help us connect the folks that live in the in-town neighborhoods. Now, you may say, well, I live in the suburbs. How's that going to help me? If you're living in the suburbs and you're driving downtown, if you can get anybody off the road who's ahead of you, doesn't that help you as well?
That's a good point.
If you can get me off the connector in the morning because I'm heading from my house just a few miles north, but I hop on the connector in the morning, and if I want to do it and take that, wouldn't it be great to get me out of your way? Even if you're not going to use it.
Hadn't thought about that angle.
I still struggle with this thing. Like, well, it's not helping me out here where I live in Gwinnett or Cobb, but it will. It may not help you directly, but it's going to help you indirectly. I live in Inman Park, and I'm a block from a train station. I'm also about 4 blocks from the Beltline. And my wife and I chose where we live. We gave up some things. We gave up having a big backyard, and we gave up, having a huge house, but we wanted to be centrally located, and we wanted to be near the Beltline and near a train station because we feel like, as Atlanta continues to grow, traffic gets worse and worse. Those things are going to be more and more important. So I guess, when the current East Side Trail is about, like I said, 4 blocks from our house, and within a year, they are extending the East Side Trail northeast up to 85. So it'll run past, it currently stops at 10th and Monroe, but it'll run continuing along Piedmont Park and Anza Golf Club, and it'll go right to my office, right to the back of our parking lot. And so a year from now, I hope to be getting on my bike in the morning.
There you go.
And getting off the in-town streets and letting some others have their,
getting
have
out
fun.
Of the way.
I'm going to get out of the way and not be sitting in front of you at the red light, taking my bike back and forth to work on those days that I can do that when I don't have appointments and have to be places. But yeah, I think the Beltline, in my opinion, is the best and in some ways the biggest development in the city in decades. It's not one single location. It helps us all throughout the city. It makes our city more walkable and connected. And you see the city differently when you're on the Beltline. You're seeing it from a different angle, from a different point of view. And you're exercising, I'll be getting my exercise just biking back and forth to the office. So I cannot wait for that day. It cannot come soon enough. And then the other thing that the Beltline does is it has spurred on roughly $10 billion in economic development. That's approximately half of that has already been realized. So let's say there's $5 billion that has actually been realized, another $5 billion in the works. It has delivered 10,000 new jobs, and this is according to the Atlanta Beltline's website. And it's created or improved 1,300 acres of green space in the city, which just improves our quality of life for everybody. So yeah, that's, I could go on and on about that and get on my soapbox, but I think I've given enough there.
No, and it's so reassuring to hear all the ways that, I guess I didn't realize how impactful commercial real estate is, and just all the developments and the ways that they make life more efficient, but also bring people together. So thank you so much for sharing that. And if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get your information?
Sure. Yeah.
Shoot you an email or a text or call.
So you can call me at 404-662-2212. That's my direct office line. Our website is pollockcommercial.com. That's POLLOCK commercial.com. And we're also on social media. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. So yeah, you can check us out at all those places as well.
Awesome. Thank you for such an insightful interview. We hope you'll stick around because our last guest is going to be a real treat. We've got Miss Kitti Murr from Refuge Coffee Co. Her and her husband live on the edge of Atlanta in a refugee community that has been called the most diverse square mile in the world, also known as Clarkston, Georgia. And this has been the most intense and inviting neighborhood they've lived in their experience. It's taught them to dream big and love even bigger. And one expression of that love has been their coffee company, Refuge Coffee Co., a nonprofit that Kitti founded as a way to join hands with neighbors near and far and create an opportunity and true refuge through coffee and community service. So thanks for joining Thanks for joining us today, Kitti.
Thanks, Grace. And I've learned so much.
I know. This has been a great episode. I know. That was incredible. So tell us a little bit about, at its core, what the mission of Refuge Coffee Company is.
Sure. I've memorized our coffee sleeve. And our coffee sleeve has our mission. Our trucks have our mission emblazoned on them. But what our coffee sleeve says is that as you enjoy this drink, this cup of coffee that you're either enjoying at our coffee shop in Clarkston or when we cater with our trucks or our carts or something like that, as you enjoy this drink, you are providing a living wage job training and mentorship for a resettled refugee who lives right here in Atlanta's own backyard. So that's really the core of our mission. And there are all kinds of things that happen that to me are really magical downstream from that, but that's why we exist.
That's the mission. So why coffee? Why not, I don't know, wine or bread?
Yeah.
Why coffee?
Well, I love it. That's why. No, I do love it. But, one of the things, my husband and I moved to Clarkston 7 years ago from the old Fourth Ward. And when we moved there, we really fell in love with the refugee community. I mean, we fell in love with the whole mashup of people who were there. And one of the things I wanted to do, I'm just a networker at heart, not quite as much as Kristi is, but very much so. And so when I meet someone that I immediately care about, I want other people I care about to know them. And so a coffee shop just seemed like the best way to maximize that. And I've watched it unfold. Coffee is sort of like a first date, and so what we've been able to do is provide a way for people to know our community without like even making a commitment right away to do anything. So coffee is just that really easy way to get to know someone at initially, and then what we've discovered is people want to dive in and they want to know how they can help or how they can get involved. And then we wanted a place for our community to feel safe and welcomed, and that to know that there was no agenda for them. And a coffee shop is a great place for that, because you can just show up, you can get a, $3 or $2 cup of coffee, and you can sit all day if you want to,
Yeah. And that's got to be nice for refugees coming here to have an opportunity to make a living wage, get trained, and get to know the community a little bit, know the faces that they're going to see at the grocery store, and have those conversations.
Yeah, I think that's true. I will say that, what we often say is that we do the work we do with the refugee community, not for the refugee community. So the people who drive our business are refugees. They're the ones, they're the face of it. They're the people who do the hard work. They're the people who interact with people. And so I love that we get to show the rest of the world the value that they have, not by even saying it, but just by letting them show it. Yeah.
So tell
really
us
neat.
a little bit about the job training that they receive. That was interesting to me.
Yeah. Okay. Our model is a little unique in that, it's a full-time living wage job. So, job training programs don't have to be living wage. But we decided we wanted to be as generous as we possibly could without going out of business. And so we offer it's a full-time job. Most of the week is spent on the job. So it's on the job training. And they're not only learning barista skills, but they're learning a lot about the hospitality industry and they're learning English because of the interaction with customers day in and day out. And then there's a 2 to 3 hour classroom time. And the classroom time is, it's really more about life and how to make a life here. It's a little bit of English. It's a little bit of, we go through just all the things you need to know to become a citizen and to take the citizenship exam. So there's preparation for that. Even though if someone just arrived in the country, you have to wait 5 years before you can apply to be a citizen, but it's that preparation. One of the things we do is we try to help our trainees, kind of figure out what their dreams are, because a refugee often doesn't have the luxury of dreaming. They're in survival mode. The average stay in a refugee camp is 7 to 14 years. So people are stuck in holding, for a long time before they make it here. And so they're just making it, So that has been a really cool thing to watch the people that work for us look up, and look around and say, I want to contribute. I want to be a person who gives back. They immediately want to do that. What's the path to do that? And that's what we do. We help with that path.
Yeah. You help them
illuminate the path.
The path and kind of show them a way to make it a little easier. But what are some things that you think we should know about the refugees that come to our community?
Oh, that's so I could go on and on here. They're the basic things. When we moved to Clarkston, we had volunteered with World Relief, one of the resettlement agencies, but we didn't know a lot about even what a refugee is. So the definition of a refugee from the UNHCR is that it's a person who's crossed an international border because they're fleeing violence of some kind, like war or persecution. And when a refugee gets to that second country, when they leave their home, because they have to, they get to another country and they can apply with the UN for resettlement in a third country. And what I hear people say often is, well, to our employees, well, why did you choose Clarkston? Why did you choose Atlanta? And the truth is there is no choice. Like, you apply, 1% of the 70 million displaced people in the world today make it to a third country. So you don't get to choose. If you're accepted, you get to choose to apply. You do get to choose that. You don't get to choose what country you go to. And then when refugees arrive here in our country, within 6 months, they have to begin paying back their airfare. So this is not a free ride. There's a federal gift of $925 that every refugee receives, but that's it. And they're set up in an apartment. The State Department decides what they need to have in that apartment, and the resettlement agencies provide that. But the apartment isn't paid for by the resettlement agencies. So that $925 goes towards living expenses almost right away. And the beautiful thing is that 97% of refugees to Georgia are self-sufficient within 6 months.
Wow.
So these are heroic survivors, people who, and they are ready to give back almost immediately, which I've said that, but I think that's important for people to know.
Yeah. It gives a lot of perspective when because I think so often we think about, okay, now you're here, here's how you learn the ropes here. But if we knew more about their past, maybe we'd all be a little more empathetic. And so why should people hire your catering team or drink coffee at your shop?
So many reasons. Well, one, when we started, we just started 4 years ago. We wanted to do this with excellence, not perfectly, but with excellence. So we have excellent coffee. I think our coffee is really, really good. We have these coffee trucks, and we can roll up and do anything a coffee shop can do within minutes because it's right there. So that's one reason. Another reason is that when you support us, we're a nonprofit and we obviously take donations, but our model is really interesting. Up until recently, it was half of our income was earned income from our catering and our shop, and the other half was donation. But our business is edging out the donation side because, not completely, but you support job training. So you support hard work for resettled refugees when you hire us. It's kind of a no-brainer to me.
So who are some cool clients that have hired you that you might want to mention?
Oh, that's so fun. So, we have been all over Atlanta, which is, let me just back up and say, refugees are mostly resettled in Clarkston. Clarkston is, in most states, refugees are kind of spread throughout the state in the bigger cities, but somehow in the 80s, the resettlement program, the way it worked out is that most refugees are resettled in Clarkston. So they're a lot of them right there. So what's interesting though is that it's really easy to come to Clarkston, to find your way there and never get out of Clarkston. And we give people an opportunity to go all over the city, which is really fun. So we've been to the Center for Civil and Human Rights. We've been to the Capitol several times. We've been to a lot of large churches. Let me think about what else. We've served on the set of The Walking Dead a lot, Stranger Things. I think we've served maybe close to 100 film and TV sets since we started, which is really, really fun. Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of fun, but what's the most fun thing about the work that you do?
It's just the people, the relationships. We had staff meeting yesterday and we work really hard and we've got a lot to do and, the stakes feel high sometimes. And yet we have a real sense of family and we laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh. So, And our staff right now, I would have to count. But we have people from several different countries. And so the language issues are always just funny. You know, they're just funny. And the idioms we use that don't make any sense, you know, are just usually a source of laughter. So I think it's just the people. These are people who, like for instance, our very first trainee is Leon Shambana. He was a history teacher in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I remember when we first hired him, he was 20 minutes early for his interview, and we were like, "You're a keeper. We love you." And he will say to our trainees now, "I don't know what on time means in your culture, but here at Refuge, it means 5 minutes early." Like, he just really hammers that in. But he used to say, "I want us to put Clarkston on the map. Like, I want this place to matter more because we do the work we do." And I really think, so they're passionate people who everybody, you know, people will say sometimes, "Oh, are you the owner of Refuge?" Well, I'm not the owner. We're a nonprofit. We don't have an owner. But I really feel like our entire staff and every trainee we have, they're all owners and they own it.
So why did you go the nonprofit route instead of the for-profit route?
Oh, that's such a good question. Well, one, you know, we wanted to open a coffee shop, and coffee shops aren't typically lucrative in the first year or so. And we wanted to open a coffee shop in a lower income area. So we were going to discount prices right away. So that's one reason, but partly it was just me. I don't know the for-profit world at all. Not at all. Like, if you could have zero business acumen, I have less than that. So I just felt like the thought of getting investors was scary to me, and the thought of owing money back. What's interesting is we owe something to our donors, and I feel that. Like, we owe them hard work. We owe them impact. We owe them life change in the people that we serve. So the feelings are really the same. I didn't realize that at the time, but the world that I knew was more the nonprofit world. And immediately we just had a lot of very generous people who helped us get started. So it kind of confirmed that choice. But yeah, that's really why. It's really more of a personal reason.
So I know I have a cup of coffee in my hand, but I usually start my morning with at least two. So if I wanted to go get some Refuge coffee, where might I be able to do that?
Yeah. Well, visit our website, and everything's there. It's refugecoffeeco.com. We're Refuge Coffee Co. on all the social media, or not all of them, but the main ones on the platforms. In Clarkston, and this is interesting, people think we're so far away. We are not. We are less than half a mile outside of 285 at the East Ponce de Leon exit, right? Like, we're 4 miles from Decatur. We're really accessible to most people. Just don't go at 4:30 in the afternoon. But really, we're very, very easy to get to. We're just 2 turns after that.
Awesome.
We're in an old gas station.
Very cool. All right. Well, I think we're coming up on time. So thank you all for joining us. Catch us next month, November 21st at 11:30. And if you want to know more about these folks, check us out on atlantabusinessradio.com. You can hear the replay. You'll have links to their websites, LinkedIn's. Get in touch with these people. They're doing great things for Atlanta.